Rebecca, you in room 1? Okay, thanks. All right, we're back on the record on State versus Loyd. Mr. Loyd is present with his attorneys since this morning. Mr. Loyd has been wearing the same clothes. He's got a black button-down shirt, dress shirt. He's got on dress pants. He is wearing jail shoes and he's shackled, but his feet are underneath the table and cannot be seen by a jury. Count 5 in this case was not severed, correct? Okay. All right. We got jurors? Okay. All right, let's bring in the juror in seat 14, juror 6094. He's from the 9 o'clock group. He was just late this morning. Morning. Or
Morning.
Good afternoon, actually.
Oh, yes.
Hope you had a good lunch. Did you see anything or hear anything about the case at lunch?
No, ma'am.
All right. We're going to be asking you some more questions. The important thing to remember is we're not looking for a specific answer. There are no right or wrong answers to these questions. There's just what you believe and what you think. Okay? So let me start with, you indicated that you'd heard something about this case. Is that correct?
I saw the news reports when,
When was
I believe it was 2017.
Back when it happened?
Yes, ma'am. When they were showing live footage on the news.
How much did you see?
Not too much, maybe one report's worth.
Okay. And do you remember anything about what you saw in that report?
There was footage from a Walmart, and they stated that the suspect was what had happened, what he had done. Didn't hear too much about what had happened the days before, what had led up to the incident, but not enough for me to make a profound statement about what to judge or anything.
And since then, you hadn't seen anything or heard anything till you came to this courtroom?
Maybe once or twice. Not really on the news, though, just in passing, talking to people.
Okay. Do you take a wild guess how many conversations you had about this case?
2 at most.
Did you overhear other people talking about it or read stuff or anything else?
No, ma'am.
Based on all of that, have you formed an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Loyd is guilty?
I can't. No, ma'am.
All right. The law requires jurors to presume him to be innocent until and if the state can prove he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just the law. You think you can do that in this case?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Any doubts in your mind about your ability to do that?
No, ma'am.
All right, can you tell me your feelings about the death penalty or your beliefs about it, please?
I believe it has its place in the right cases, but I'm not against or for it. I don't have any prejudice towards the death penalty.
Okay. Do you have any belief that in some cases the death penalty should be automatic?
No, I can't say.
So if you're chosen as a juror in this case, and if Mr. Loyd was convicted of first-degree murder, that's when the decision about the death penalty comes into play. So here's what happens. There's a penalty phase. Both sides get to present evidence. The state's going to present evidence of aggravators, reasons they believe death is the appropriate sentence. Defense is going to present evidence of mitigation, reasons they believe that life is without the possibility of parole is the appropriate sentence. You with me so far?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you have to be able to sit there and listen to it with an open mind, listen to all the evidence. Then you go back in the jury room with your fellow jurors. You must determine that at least one aggravator has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt before you can even consider death as a possibility. But let's say that you determine that. Now you've got to weigh aggravators and mitigators. You go through your process. It's a group process, but it's also fundamentally an individual process. You're weighing those out, and in the end, you have to decide whether or not you feel life or death is the appropriate sentence. Do you think that you could do that with an open mind?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Do you think you would be predisposed towards one sentence, or predisposed towards death because it was a police officer who was killed?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any qualms about imposing a death sentence? And qualms is probably not a good term, but do you have any doubts that you could do it?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any doubts that you could impose life if that was the appropriate sentence?
I don't.
All right. As I indicated to you all, Mr. Loyd has raised the defense of insanity. And I gave you a very brief rundown of what is involved in that. Do you have any immediate reaction to listening to evidence about an insanity defense?
No, on the contrary, I'd like to hear all the evidence.
Okay. So it's something that you could listen to and weigh and reach a verdict on?
If that's the case that's trying to be proven, yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, sir. I don't have any other questions for you. State, you may inquire. I'm sorry, just for the record, you are juror 6094, is that correct? All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good morning. Afternoon.
From based on what you just said, you indicated that the death penalty has its place in certain cases. So based on that, I'm gathering that if the jury found the defendant guilty of murder, you were asked to consider the proper sentence in this case. If the evidence convinced you that death was the appropriate sentence in this case, in your mind, could you vote for that?
Yes, sir.
And if, likewise, if the evidence convinced you that life was the appropriate sentence in this case, could you vote for that also?
Absolutely.
Now, the judge earlier indicated about the aggravating factors, and those, again, are factors that may make the death penalty more appropriate in a certain case. They are limited by statute. The judge will tell you what the aggravating factors you're allowed to consider. Can you confine your focus just on those aggravating factors the judge tells you is permissible to consider and not look at anything else?
Yes, sir. That would be fair.
Okay. As far as mitigating factors are concerned, they can be pretty much anything. Can you come into this process with an open mind and consider any mitigating factors that are presented to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this isn't the time for us to talk about any of the details or evidence that you may hear regarding aggravating factors or mitigating circumstances. So I'm going to just ask you some general questions about those factors. Do you think that Mr. Loyd deserves to have a jury who will remain open-minded and truly consider any and all mitigating factors that are presented to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Even at first blush, if you heard something that was a mitigating factor, and at first blush, without hearing any evidence about it, you thought, well, I don't know if that's really important. Can you hold off your judgment on that until you hear all the evidence surrounding a mitigating factor to actually make a decision?
Yes, sir.
So if I were to stand here and rattle off 100 different mitigating factors, are you telling me that you would truly consider each and every one of those before making your decision of what the appropriate punishment in this case would be?
I think it's only fair. Each one is weighted.
Okay. Do you have any, I'm not going to ask in great detail about it, but do you have any religious or moral beliefs that might interfere with your ability to vote for death in this case? Some religions have that concern. Do you have any concerns?
No, sir.
Okay. If you're selected for this jury, You may be put in a position where you're back in the deliberation room talking amongst the jurors about the evidence, about the law, and expressing different viewpoints amongst the 12 of you. Would you be able to listen to other people's viewpoints and consider those viewpoints and maybe forming your own decision?
I think that's the best way an intelligent viewpoint can be gained. Listen to all the sides.
Obviously, no one would tolerate bullying or yelling or screaming or anything like that, but do you feel that sometimes disagreement and different ideas are productive in a conversation?
Sometimes.
Are you willing to consider other people's viewpoints, even if they might not agree with you, and maybe reconsider your position if they bring up something you didn't think of?
100%.
Okay. The judge indicated that if a vote for death must be unanimous, okay? If any one juror feels that life is the appropriate punishment in the case, the sentence in this case would be life, okay? If the jury unanimously comes back and says death penalty is appropriate in this case, everyone's going to know you voted for it. Okay. If you're back there and you determine after hearing all the evidence and all the law that death is the appropriate punishment, are you able to come back in this courtroom, raise your hand, and tell the judge that this person deserves to die for what he did?
Overrule.
Well, it sounds like at that point I've already made peace with it, so I would be.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions about insanity. The judge explained to you some of the factors surrounding that as well. Because the insanity defense has a component of mental health, I'm going to ask you a little more personal questions, and I don't mean to pry, but I think you probably understand why I need to ask those questions. Do you or any close friend or family member have had any experience with a mental health issue?
A family member, yes, sir.
Okay. Did that person seek treatment?
Yes.
Okay, and is that person doing better as a result of the treatment?
That and other factors, yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm assuming because you've had some personal experience with the mental health issue, do you believe that mental health issues are real in society?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that someone simply says they have a mental health issue, that's always the case?
No, sir.
Would you be able to listen to all of the facts and evidence surrounding a mental health issue in an insanity defense before you come to a decision of whether or not insanity is an issue in this case?
Yes, sir. I think that's needed.
Is there anything in your life, your background, that you think we need to know about that will determine whether or not you would be a good juror for this type of a case? And before you answer, I'm looking forward, maybe some jurors may have had the death of a loved one, the murder of a loved one, which could obviously be an issue in a case like this. Anything like that in your background?
I've seen death, but I don't think seeing that is going to be my greatest asset in this case. I think, well, maybe it did. Maybe it helped me have an open mind, but I think that's going to be the best factor in this kind of case. Be able to see all the evidence without prejudice.
So bottom line, that's the ultimate question. Can you reserve judgment and consider all the evidence in the case before you make a decision?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. Mr. Linneman, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Great. How about you, sir?
Great, thank you. What kind of work do you do?
I work for Lockheed Martin. I'm a mechanical engineering technician.
Now, you said when you were talking about the information you had heard in the news, that it was not enough of a profound statement for you to form an opinion.
That's correct.
What does that mean?
Honestly, the only thing I can remember is that the reporter had said Mr. Loyd was on the run after killing one of the deputies. and I didn't see it. The only thing I had was this woman's words to go off of, and it just wasn't enough for me to make a judgment call.
When you see the woman's words, you mean the newscasters?
Right, yes, sir.
Have there been situations when you've heard enough in the news to make the profound statement?
Not too often, because I usually just don't, ashamed to say I don't keep up with it enough, because it doesn't affect me really. But I guess there was one case, probably in the Casey Anthony trial, was the only one that I can remember that was on TV enough and around enough places for me to see the court proceedings and enough of the evidence for me to kind of base a judgment towards that, but still not with 100% certainty.
Right. So you have made judgments on things when you've heard facts in the news?
Partial judgments, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you always believe the news?
No, sir.
Do you think I should be concerned that you have made a decision based on the news alone? You're saying Casey Anthony case.
I only said that just to say that that was the closest I've ever come. It's not like I was ready to condemn her one way or the other.
And it was based on everything you heard in the news?
Right, yes, sir. Seeing the court proceedings.
Court proceedings or anything?
Yes, sir. That's what I pertain to, yeah. There were actual court proceedings.
Okay. Now, I think you said you were talking to some people about this case?
Not exactly this case, and nothing recently. This is only within the past 4 years that this has been going on. I've heard it, or he's come up in conversation maybe twice, and I'm probably exaggerating with that.
Do you remember what the conversations were?
Absolutely not.
Do you consider yourself someone who becomes emotionally connected with a feeling like anger or hate when you see something on the news that disturbs you?
No, I think that's just a part of me getting older. I've detached from that.
So there was a time you had that in your life and you felt no longer?
Oh, sure, in my 20s, yeah.
And what do you account for that not being in existence now?
Probably certain people leaving my life. Part of growing up, I guess, you lose, honestly, it probably happened after I lost my mom to cancer. Seeing her suffer and things just, I'm not as quick to come to a conclusion anymore.
Judge?
Right.
Now, you heard that this case involved the issue of insanity. And one of the issues, or one of the things you would hear if you were on this jury would be the instructions from the judge on insanity. And one of the issues is essentially that if Mr. Loyd was found not guilty by reason of insanity, then it would be the judge's decision on where to sentence him in terms of the hospital, or confinement, or otherwise. That's the rule. In this case, you heard the judge tell you that Mr. Loyd had been convicted of first-degree murder of Sade Dixon, his girlfriend, and the unborn child that she was carrying. And so this information is part of it now. How do you think that's going to affect your thinking, not in the second part of the case, but in the first part of the case, when we're dealing with guilt or innocence?
Well, it's definitely something that my mind is going to recall to, and I'm going to try to find factors as to maybe why, but it won't be the main focus.
And I know we're asking you a lot of tough questions, and only you can answer them. But when you say it's not going to be the main focus, is it going to be something that you factor in to your decision on the guilt or innocence of Mr. Loyd?
I think I'd be lying if I didn't say I would weigh it in partially.
Okay. Judge, can I come sidebar?
I need to ask him. Yeah, let me see the attorneys at the bench. Thanks. All right, sir, let me give you some, I'm sorry. I always forget you have to get back to your seat. Let me explain something to you. You were told that Mr. Loyd was convicted and sentenced to life in the Miss Dixon case. That information cannot be used by you to determine guilt or innocence in this case, all right? It's used for a different purpose, and that will be explained to you during the trial. All right, you understand that?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Lund.
Now, I know this is tough, because you want to follow the law. You want to do what's right. We have things that happen in our life, prejudices and so forth, that some people can't put aside,
I'm sending
even when
you
they're
an
told they have to follow the law. We want to follow the law. Now, a few minutes ago, we talked about this issue where you said you would have a hard time removing it from your decision-making process, the fact that he was convicted.
Well, not necessarily a hard time. It would be in my mind, is all I mean by that. It would not guide my decision towards a verdict in this case. I didn't want to put a heavy factor on that. It would be in my mind, is all I meant.
So is that what you are saying that you said earlier?
Yes, sir.
Okay, even though you didn't use the same word?
My terminology, but that is
How would it be in your mind? What would you be thinking?
maybe just. But I would have to look at evidence and determination on it.
What about if you heard from Mr. Loyd? You get to consider things that require prior obviously. If you then heard from other family, and they're telling you things about it, would you be thinking about that? Is that something you factor into your thinking as you listen to other people talk about Mr. Loyd?
Not necessarily the charges, but probably his frame of character would be what I would be listening for.
And because, other than this issue which we just talked about, these prior convictions, you would have no other information about his character. You would be using that when you're listening to the other people talk, right?
Well, I'd have to use what they stated as witnessing. That's all I would have.
Well, my question is, are you going to be using the other fact that he's a convicted felon, thinking about that?
Well, I can't. I don't know.
I want to talk to you about the death penalty a little bit.
Okay.
You heard that Mr. Loyd was sentenced to life without possibility of parole.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about that as a sentence?
I think it's devastating.
You think it's as serious or more serious than the death penalty sentence?
Personally, I think it's more serious
Why?
because then the individual has an entire lifetime to live with that, the sentencing versus going on to death row. It's it's shorter than a life sentence.
And you were asked a question, I think, by the judge, but you say it. Your thoughts on the issue of automatic death? If someone
Mr. Lenneman, I need you to stop. Mr. Lenneman, Mr. Lenneman, Mr. Lenneman, I need you to stop for one moment. Let me see the deputy at the bench, please. Hold on one second. This has nothing to do with any of this. I'm sorry, folks. That had nothing to do with any of this. Go ahead, Mr. Lenneman.
So you were talking to the judge about your thoughts on an automatic death penalty. And you understand that that would be you knowing that someone committed the offense, first-degree murder, not an accident, not an excuse, actual first-degree murder. Are your thoughts still the same?
No, I think, I couldn't say there'd be an automatic death sentence in this case.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
I
No.
think you said that before on this case, but do you think that there is a case that once you hear the facts, that there could be an automatic death penalty? There's no excuse, it's first-degree murder. You've heard the facts, it's premeditated. Is there a case that could be?
Maybe hypothetically, I'm not sure. And didn't Texas instill some law where there's a certain amount of eyewitnesses that it is an automatic death penalty?
No, this is a question for you personally. It's you personally.
Yeah.
Making a decision in your mind that there should be an automatic death penalty in certain circumstances. And I'm asking you, if there's a first-degree murder case and it's premeditated and it's not an accident, there's no excuse, would you find any first-degree murder case to be automatic in your mind?
No, I don't think so. No.
Why is that?
I just don't like that thinking where it's just automatic. Everything should be laid out and taken into account.
Well, what kind of things do you think are important to take into account?
I'm not sure. All the evidence, the testimony, I'm not sure. I'm willing to listen to all the sides, though. I deal in a field where we have to pay attention to everything, many different variables, and this is a very dynamic atmosphere.
Now, you have said there are, death penalty has its place in the right cases. What are those cases? Yes, Your Honor.
Sustained. Rephrase.
You had indicated there are certain situations. Objection.
Sustained. Rephrase.
That situation would be...
Hold on, sir. You can't answer the question.
Objection.
Sustained. Rephrase.
Now, you had talked about how you think it's important that jurors converse.
Right.
And you were talking to these gentlemen here.
Yes.
that gentleman there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that the law is, in this state, there's instruction, jury instruction, that the decision to decide that
Yes, sir. That's what the judge said.
so if you believe that the death penalty is not appropriate, would you listen to someone else and change your mind?
I think that's a hard question to answer. I can't answer that without hearing the argument.
So you think it's important to have an argument about your opinion in regards to the death penalty?
Yes.
Why?
I feel like I'm getting lost in the question here. So are you saying, are you asking if I could be dissuaded from having a staunch want for the death penalty?
Or not the death penalty, either way.
I'm willing to listen to any argument either way, but I'm not going to have a prejudice towards voting for life or voting towards death.
Okay, and that's not really what I'm asking. I just want to make it clear. Let's go through some of the things.
Okay.
Death penalty statute consists of, number one, the state has to prove at least one aggravating factor. The jury unanimously has to find.
Right.
You follow that?
Yes.
Okay. So the next step then is making a decision what the aggravating factor is. That's an individual decision. You don't have to agree with them or disagree with them. You can talk with them or whatever. The final decision on what the aggravating factors are yours. If you make a decision on what the aggravating factors are, and you have a belief in that, are you going to let someone change your mind?
Good, because I think beliefs are dangerous in that aspect. I think a good idea is much better.
Okay, so now let's go to the second step, or third step. Now you get to review the mitigating circumstances that are placed before you, okay?
Right?
You have to make that decision on the mitigating circumstances on a lesser degree than reasonable doubt. With the lower threshold, you individually make it. Could you do that?
100%.
Okay. Now, there are certain mitigating factors that you may be asked to consider. And I'm going to generally talk about some. They may not have anything to do with this case, but I want general idea. There may be a generally raised schism is considered a possible mitigating circumstance.
Right.
Could you consider something like that?
I could.
Okay. Now, mental health, something to do with mental health, may be possible. Could you consider something like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Someone who has possibly brain, consider that a possible mitigating circumstance.
Yes, sir.
Trauma in the life, could you consider that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once you go through the mitigating circumstances, you get to decide which ones exist in your mind. First, they have to be proven. If they're proven, you have to give them some sort of weight. Could be a little weight, could be a lot of weight. You get to make that individual decision. Okay? So remember, you're doing this as an individual, not a group. Certainly, you can talk amongst yourselves about that. This is really the individual decision making.
Yes, sir. Is there deliberation every day with the jurors, or is that only at the end?
Jurors deliberate until they reach a verdict. And it's not every day. It's at the end of the guilt phase, and if necessary, at the end of the penalty phase.
Okay.
Other than that, you're in the courtroom listening to
Okay.
evidence. All right?
You got that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now you've come to the mitigating circumstance. You wait for that. The next thing you have to do is you have to weigh the mitigating circumstances against the aggravating circumstances. Individual decision. There decision.
Yes.
It's your decision.
Right.
Okay. Now, once you make that decision, you have to decide then whether first mitigating outweigh the aggravating. Okay?
Okay.
If they do, life is the only sentence. Understand?
I do.
If the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances, then death may be a sentence. You understand?
Okay. I'm getting a clearer picture. Yes.
Okay. So now you've done all that, and then you have to step back, and you have to make an individual decision. No matter what the finding is, if it's mitigating outweighs aggravating, you're done, you were done already. But if the aggravators in your mind outweigh the mitigators, then now you're in a position of decide whether death is the appropriate sentence.
I see.
That is an individual decision too. Collectively, if all 12 agree, then that is the verdict. If one person decides that death is not appropriate, even if they feel the aggravating circumstances outweigh the mitigating circumstances, the law says you are never compelled to vote for death under any circumstances. So that's something that's always in play with you. These are all jury instructions you will get. You follow me?
Sure.
Okay. So now we're in that situation. Everyone has made their decision. I don't know what the process is, whether you're going to talk or verbalize what it is, but you don't have to. You can all just vote your conscience and then you believe and go about your business and understand.
Yes, sir.
So it's not necessary to talk, and if you think it's important, that's fine. That's up to you. Okay?
Okay.
The most important question I have for you is that if you have a belief in something, and it's a strong belief, I know you had talked about, you think, communication and discussion are important, but if you have a strong belief, and you don't believe it's going to waver in any way, form, or fashion, would you maintain that belief?
I would. I have to hold on to my convictions.
Okay. Now, do you think it's fair, whether it's death you voted for, life you voted for, do you think it's fair that someone is going to come to you and say, you're wrong, I want you to change your opinion, you need to do this, you need to do that, do you think that's fair?
No.
Okay. That's called bullying now. Would you agree that if you were not asking for bullying,
100%.
okay, and if you see someone else with a life, death, whatever, being bullied, would you stand up?
Absolutely.
Those are all the questions I have, Judge.
All right. Thank you. Either side have a motion at the bench? Or you good?
I still maintain my previous, do I need to come sidebar or do you under?
No. Anything from state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Same ruling. Sir, we're going to need you to come back for a third session. All right.
Okay.
We have a package for you this time. It's a jury sequestration packet. Remember I told you the jury would be sequestered?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you're picked for the jury, you're sequestered that day. So you have to engage in the activity of packing for jury sequestration before you show up for the third time.
Okay.
Leave your suitcase in your car. Don't bring it into the courthouse. If you're picked for the jury, the deputies will escort you out there to get your belongings. If you're not, sorry, you'll have to go home and unpack. But you need to pack, all right?
Okay.
The jury sequestration package gives you a lot of information about what it is to be sequestered as a juror.
Okay.
We're also giving you a letter for your employer and a slip of paper giving you a phone number to start. Don't start calling before Thursday. You're a purple dot now.
Okay.
We're going to put a purple dot on your badge so you remember. And when you hear the purple dot group is to report on such and such a date, that's when you come back. We don't know
Oh,
And
so we
may
don't
not
know
know right now.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as I have, my notes say you didn't have any vacations or trips or anything planned this week. So
No, ma'am, I had a friend coming into town this weekend, but I'm staying in town. It's not,
enjoy being with your friend. We're not going to call you back before next week.
Okay,
that's
so
why I
I'm
said
going to
don't-
work tomorrow
Don't call
and-
until Thursday.
okay,
And then start calling every day.
okay.
All right? Any questions about that?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so.
Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it. You're free to go today.
Okay, great,
Remember,
thank you.
no news stories, no talking to your friends. Walk away if somebody tries to talk to you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, before we call in, you're having some difficulty with the live recorder. Password doesn't seem to be operating on laptops.
It's working fine on mine. Are you spelling it correctly?
What job are you in? Are you in Markeith DM session?
Are you in the correct session?
Oh, okay, I was going in under Rebecca.
Nope. All right, try it again.
Room number 1, and look for the job that says Markeith DM session, date. And then put Rebecca as the password.
Nope. Is that a laptop? Bring your laptop here, Mr. Morer. Yeah, it's not my job. Yes.
That's it? Okay, this is October 9th.
Ta-da. No problems. All right. Let's bring in the juror in seat number 15, who is juror number 232. He's from the first panel. He's also from the 9 a.m. group. He was late this morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How
Good
are
afternoon.
you? All right, sir, welcome back. Any problems at lunch with anyone trying to talk to you about the case or hearing anything you weren't supposed to? All right. Let me start by telling you that there aren't any right or wrong answers to these questions. There's just what you actually believe or think. And that's all we want to hear from you. Okay? You heard something about this case, you said?
I saw it on the news
When did you see it?
when everything first happened.
So back in 2017?
Yes.
How much did you see?
Probably everything that aired on Channel 13.
So you watch Channel 13 pretty regularly?
Yes.
And do you still watch the news pretty regularly?
Yes.
Have you heard anything about the case since the time it originally happened and the time you came to jury duty last Friday?
Just that they, starting jury process.
Okay.
That's all.
What do you remember about what you heard on the news?
I remember that they were saying he had shot his girlfriend and the baby. And he was on the run. And then I was told that, I saw that when he had shot the deputy. And then I saw the actual footage when he was arrested. And the officer kicked him in his eye. So I
Okay.
saw that on Channel 13.
All right. So you saw quite a bit.
Yes.
And after that, did you see quite a bit more
Yes.
over the years?
I watched Channel 13 because I need to get the weather. I have a lawn service. So that's how I kind of plan my day.
Okay. So based on all of that, have you formed an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Loyd is guilty or not?
I didn't form an opinion. I just knew what the officers did to him. They should be held accountable for it,
Okay.
because he was, laying on the ground with his hands out. And they just came up and started kicking him in the face.
Okay. That fact that you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
is not relevant to the issue of whether or not Mr. Loyd is guilty of the charges he's facing now.
I understand.
So, and I understand your position. Do you think that, it sounds as if you're pretty angry with the police about what happened.
Yes.
Do you think that you could put that aside and just focus on the charges he's facing and whether or not the state has proved it beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes, I can put that to the side.
Okay. And then if he was convicted of first-degree murder and there was a penalty phase, you now have to make a decision about life without the possibility of parole or death. Do you think you could put what happened with the police officers aside, or do you believe that would be influencing you?
No, I think I can put it to the side.
Okay. You had some concerns initially on Friday about your ability to be fair, correct?
Yes.
And what were those concerns?
Well, I knew one of the witnesses.
What witness?
And so on Friday, I was basically trying to get out of it because I need to go to work and various things like that. I have a case going on with the insurance. I was in an accident the end of June, so I'm trying to get that settled.
Okay, so you got a lot going on.
Yes.
All right, the witness that you know, which witness was that?
It was Richard Roof.
How well do you know this witness?
We grew up in the same neighborhood together.
So are y'all close? Do you socialize together? or-
I haven't socialized with him in a while. When he went out to the military, and then he came back and was working with the force. I would see him out on duty sometimes,
Okay.
you know.
So if he took the stand to testify, you know, there's a jury instruction that says that, yeah. It's whose father?
Ruth, who's testified in this case, that's his father.
Okay. Do you know the dad or the son?
The son,
Yeah. So who's testifying? The son or the dad?
I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit?
Is the person that you know to be, the Roof that you know, does he work for FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
I don't know exactly who he's working for. He was an officer with OPD.
How old is he about?
He's 50, 51, 52.
Well, let's say it is the son, not, you know, or that you know the son and it's the dad. It's the Roof family. Is that
Yes.
going to influence you? If they take the stand, you have to weigh all witnesses under the same rules, okay? You can't give one witness more credence than another. You got to go through the rules we give you to weigh testimony of witnesses. You can believe or disbelieve any witness you choose, but everybody takes the stand, you know, starting out equal, okay?
Okay.
Do you think you can do that, or would you be thinking, yeah, I know these folks. I believe what they're going to say?
I can do it.
Okay. Tell me about your job. What's the problem with your job?
Well, I have two jobs. I work at the airport for Avis, delivering rental cars, and I have a landscaping business.
Okay. So if you're in here for 3 weeks, are you getting paid at those two jobs?
No,
Can you afford to pay your bills if you're not getting paid?
no.
Any objections from state?
No objection.
State, defense?
Can we put aside right just for 1 second, Judge?
You can. All right, sir. I don't think our notes, I'm sorry. All All right, sir, I don't think our notes reflected that you weren't going to get paid, so I'm going to excuse you as a juror. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in, but you're discharged. You're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you, sir. All right. Next up, I have, let's bring back the juror in seat. Wait a minute. Seat 21, please. She's returning for additional questions. Welcome back, ma'am. You're juror number 45, correct?
21. I mean, 45, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
your seat's 21. There's too many numbers, I get it. All right, did you have a good lunch?
Yes, thank
Did you
you.
have a chance to think about everything you know about the case and whether or not it would influence you in making a decision in this case?
Yeah, I don't think anything like I was telling you in the past or whatever, when I was watching it in the beginning. I don't think it'll influence anything on a decision.
Okay. And you did say that you originally thought Mr. Loyd was guilty when you were watching
Yeah,
that.
when I watched it on the news.
Have you heard or seen anything that would change your mind about that?
No, I don't really watch the news much anymore.
Okay. So as I told you, you've got to start believing that he's innocent. Can you explain to me how you went from thinking he was guilty to believing he's innocent now?
Well, a lot of the times I've learned certain things on the news, they over-exaggerate on certain things. So I kind of don't really go by what they say as the truth, kind of. But back then I would kind of watch the news and think it was.
I'm sorry, the mic's going lower and
Oh.
lower, and I'm having trouble hearing you.
I said back then I kind of would watch the news and just kind of get sucked into everything that they would tell you. But now I don't really pay attention. But honestly, I do have a heart, so I kind of feel sorry for people.
So who do you feel sorry for in this case?
I don't feel sorry for anybody right now, but I do have a soft heart, so I can't make a judgment on somebody. You know what I mean? I can't make a judgment on somebody because I feel sorry for it's kind of weird, but I feel sorry for, I see different parts of, it's hard to explain.
So you're a sympathetic person or an empathetic person?
Yeah, I kind of look at all the different angles of each side.
All right. So your job as a juror in the guilt phase, determining whether or not Mr. Loyd is actually guilty of the charges that have been brought against him, is to listen to the evidence, to the end of the evidence. You have to listen to everything before you make a decision. And then, and this is a very brief description of your job, you have to determine whether or not the state of Florida has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty of the charges. If, based solely on the evidence you heard in this courtroom, you believed him to be guilty, could you vote guilty?
Yeah, I could, but I'll be honest with you, I thought about, I've never been on a jury before, and since I was here Friday, I kind of thought about it, and I was I'd feel bad putting somebody's life in my hands, kind of making that decision for them. But that's just, like I said, because I have a heart for everybody kind of thing.
Well, it's not supposed to be easy. I mean,
I know.
jury duty is tough, and we recognize that, and we want jurors to take their job very seriously. And in a case like this, if you reach the penalty phase where you have to decide between voting for life without the possibility of parole or death, yeah, that's pretty serious, and we want you to take it seriously. So let's assume you've gotten past the guilt phase. You're in penalty phase now. State's going to present evidence of what are called aggravators, reasons they believe the death penalty is the appropriate sentence. Defense is going to present evidence of what's called mitigators, reasons they believe life without the possibility of parole is the appropriate sentence. Would you be able to listen to both sides with an open mind?
Yes.
Okay. And in the end, after you go back into the jury room and you're weighing these aggravators and these mitigators, you believe that the appropriate sentence is life without possibility of parole. Would you have a problem voting for that?
I wouldn't have a problem doing the right thing. Just the only thing about me is like, I probably after the fact, whether it was whatever I decide, if it was something where I had to make a decision where somebody was guilty, I would probably have I would feel bad.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I'm just being
so
honest.
could you vote for life without the possibility of parole?
Could I?
Yeah.
If that's what I had to do.
Well, if
I'm
that's
not
where the
totally-
evidence took you, is that what you would do?
Yes.
And if at the end of all of it, you believed that the appropriate sentence was death, could you vote for death?
I could do it, but I'd probably still feel bad.
Okay. Mr. Loyd has raised what's called the defense of insanity. I kind of briefly explained that to you all. Is there anything about that defense that would cause you to say, I'm never going to listen to testimony about that, I can't accept it?
No.
Would you be willing to listen with an open mind to the testimony and make a decision based on the evidence and testimony in the courtroom?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to turn this over to the lawyer state.
Oh, I thought I was done. Sorry.
No, you're not done. Sorry.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Generally, what are your feelings about the death penalty?
I mean, I feel bad for anybody who gets it, but then we all have to, I guess, accept our responsibilities for our actions. And we know that there's a possibility for anything that we do, just like if we speed.
Do you think the death penalty is an appropriate sentence in certain types of first-degree murder cases?
I mean, I would never want to wish death on anybody, but I mean, legally, if that's what has to happen.
Well, it never has to happen. You're never required to vote for the death penalty.
Okay.
That's up to you. That would be an individual decision for you to make if we got to that point in this trial. Knowing it's an individual decision that you have to make, and you don't have to vote for the death.
Okay.
Can you envision any situation or any set of facts where you would vote for the death penalty?
I mean, the only thing I could think of that anybody would deserve the death penalty would probably be taking another life. But I mean, still, I don't feel like I should, be the one to do the same to somebody else.
Okay. So
Kinda. It's kind of weird.
you just said that you don't feel that you could be the one to vote for the death penalty and potentially take somebody's life based on that vote.
Like, I don't feel like, I don't like consciously, like I would feel like bad.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm a forgiving person. So like, even if people have done things to me, I don't like hold it against them or whatever. So I can be a tough person, but then at the same time, I have a soft heart.
Knowing that you would never have to vote for the death penalty, and I'm not going to ask what the circumstances are,
Yeah.
but can you see a set of facts in your mind that you would say, this case deserves the death penalty and I am willing to vote for it, despite feeling bad about it?
Yeah, I would do what needs to be done, what the right thing is to do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like if the evidence shows it and that's what my job is to do as being a juror, then I would go with it. But the only problem I have with it is, like I said, my heart, you know?
Sure. you mentioned that you would do what needs to be done, and if it was your job as a juror to vote that way. You understand that your job as a juror would never be required for you to vote that way. It's always up to you.
Okay.
You'd never need to vote for the death penalty. It would have to be a decision you made after looking down into the depths of your soul, the heart of your hearts, listening to all the evidence in the law. Do you think that's the right sentence in this case, if we got to that point?
Okay.
Looking into down into the depth of your soul, of whether you could do it, would you be able to, if you looked at the evidence, and if you thought that the death penalty was appropriate, considering all of the evidence, looking down into your heart of hearts, would you be able to walk into this courtroom, raise your hand, and say, this man deserves to die for what he did? Now, it's one thing to ask that question if you're hanging out with family and friends outside of a courtroom, but looking at it in a situation where you may find yourself actually in that situation, do you think you could do that?
I think I can. Like walking in here Friday, I think it kind of makes you realize how serious, because I've never really been in a courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you walk in, it kind of, I don't know, it's just weird how to explain it.
There are things called aggravating factors, and those are limited by statute. And I think the judge may have mentioned this briefly. You'd be able to fine your decision on whether the death penalty is appropriate to just those aggravating factors that the judge tells you are appropriate in this case.
Yes.
Okay. We talked a little bit about mitigating factors, and those are factors that may make the life in prison the appropriate punishment in this case, as opposed to the death penalty. Would you be able to consider any and all mitigating evidence that is put before you before making an ultimate decision as far as what a proper punishment should be?
Now, as a juror, do we vote, like, do you guys tell us what we're voting on? We don't decide the punishment. So, I mean, I know that's a silly question, but I'm just asking. Sorry.
Ask your question again. Do we
I
what?
was saying, as a juror, we don't, like, you're the one that decides punishment. We just kind of decide if they're guilty or not.
The way this works, ma'am, are you talking about penalty phase?
Yeah.
Guilt, I have nothing to do with your vote on guilt or not guilty. That's
Oh, okay.
totally up to the jury. On penalty phase, you're going to be given some specific instructions by me. You vote either life without the possibility of parole or death. In order for a judge to impose a death sentence, the jury has to unanimously vote for death.
Okay.
If any one juror votes for life without possibility of parole, the sentence is life without possibility of parole.
Okay.
Okay?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Talking about the mitigation evidence, would you be able to consider any and all mitigation presented to you and listen to the evidence that addresses those types of mitigation evidence before you make your ultimate decision?
Yes.
Regardless of what the mitigation is, could you consider that evidence?
Like, you're saying, listen to all the evidence and
Yes.
make my decision with the evidence? Yes.
Do you have any religious beliefs that might influence your decision in this case as far as whether the death penalty would be appropriate versus life in prison?
I mean, I'm religious. I believe whatever happens is whatever happens with me or anybody, I do believe that it's in God's hands.
I believe some religions have some stances on the death penalty. Does your religious affiliation will abiding by your religious faith affect your decision in this case at all?
No.
Okay. One of the issues that I believe you heard the judge talk about was the issue of insanity. And obviously that involves mental health component. Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions, a little more personal than before, but I think you probably understand why I need to ask you some of those.
Fine.
Do you or a close friend or family member have ever dealt with a significant mental health issue?
My niece has had nothing major, but she's had depression.
Okay.
I don't know if that's counted. Yeah.
Did she seek any kind of treatment for that?
Yes.
Any kind of medication to help assist with that problem?
Yes.
How's she doing?
She's doing fine. She was just in a bad place at that time. And then I had her move with me.
Ma'am, I can't hear you. You
Yeah,
got to
you-
get that mic
Oh, I'm
up to
sorry.
your mouth. Go ahead. Thank you.
No, she's doing good now. She was just hanging around the wrong crowd and stuff like that.
So obviously, if mental health issues have affected your family, you do believe mental health issues are real in society, right?
You'll probably laugh at me, but I always feel like me praying helps me more than that's where I go.
Okay. Do you feel that mental health issues, though, affect certain people in the world?
I believe so.
I believe you said praying has always helped
To me, yeah.
to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it is reasonable for certain people with mental health issues to maybe seek a different route, such as medication and therapy and things like that?
Yeah, people do that.
Rephrase the question, Mr. Watson.
Do you feel there are other additional avenues that may help with mental health issues?
Overruled.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Would you be able to listen to all the evidence and make a determination only after listening to all that evidence whether a mental health issue exists in this case and whether insanity has been proven in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else in your life that might make you uncomfortable being a juror in this type of a case? For instance, I don't know if it, obviously, but a loved one was killed or murdered in a case or something to that effect. If it jumps out in your mind, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
No.
Nothing.
Thank God. Huh?
Nothing like that at all.
No.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Lindeman, you may inquire.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Good, how are you?
My name's Terry Lenneman, I represent Markeith Loyd, gentleman sitting right there. You can imagine my concern that when you came in here initially, you said you were predisposed to believing that my client was guilty. And then you had talked about how you have changed that process over time. But a few minutes ago, when the judge asked you, was there anything specific that caused you to change that opinion, you said no. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So why should I believe that you don't have the same opinion you had back then today?
Because I think when you watch the news and you listen to everything they say, that you just automatically listen to what they're telling you. And that's kind of just while watching it, you just kind of feel, from the evidence that they were saying or whatever. But I think like coming in here, I think I've grown a little bit more as kind of not making quick judgments. And like I said, when I walked in here the other day, I kind of felt like kind of like how it's actually a real, not that it's fake when you see it on TV, but I think you kind of get the feeling of how it's actually, like I said, like walking in here kind of thinking like, wow, this is actually a person here that, if I get picked, I'm responsible, and that you have to make a honest decision, because I would not want to make the wrong decision on somebody's life.
So before you came here, which was, I guess, Friday, right? Mm-hmm. Before Friday, you had watched a bunch of stories on Mr. Loyd's case?
No, that was probably way back in the day.
Okay, way back in the day, back when this happened, 2017, you watched a bunch of stories on his case, and you became of the belief that he was guilty. You had a firm conviction.
As from what the news was saying.
Okay. And then up until the time that you walked in here, you still had that firm conviction.
No, because I wasn't really sure what the case was. But then when she was mentioning more of the case, then I realized what it was.
Okay. But before you came in here, you didn't know what case it was.
No, I wasn't sure.
And you had watched TV and had a firm conviction about my client's guilt.
Back then.
Back then. And there was nothing, as you told the judge, leading up to coming in here that changed your position. Nothing came up that changed your position about what you believed back there.
I just never thought about it after it was on the news, really.
Okay. And then when you came in here, this is the first time that you started to address in your mind your old conviction of guilt.
Well, like I said, I think I'm try to be as honest as I can with people. I don't like to only see one side of everything. I usually take everything and try to focus it in my mind, but I don't usually try to focus on one part of something.
So you want to appear, because you believe you want to appear to others that you're fair.
As I feel I am.
Okay. And that's important to you.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you started talking about this with the judge, you wanted to let her know that you thought yourself was fair.
Well, I wanted to tell her that I've seen the case back then, and that I did have like a judgment back then, to be honest to everybody and to be honest to him. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to try to pretend like I never seen it or anything like that.
And the judgment was he was guilty.
Yes.
What about the case that you remember?
I don't know if it's the same case, but if it's the same case, because it was a long time ago, if it's the same case, I don't know if it was something.
You said he had a patch on his eye.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that him?
That's him.
Okay. And I think if it was back then, I think something about a pregnant girlfriend.
Okay.
Sorry, what did you just say?
Something about a pregnant girlfriend.
So you
But I didn't
remember?
remember if that was the same one.
Okay. It was the same one. As a matter of fact, the judge read from a statement of facts earlier that he was convicted of killing a pregnant girlfriend.
But I didn't know that Friday. That's why I was saying that's when it kind of registered on what case it was.
Okay.
Because I didn't recognize him because I thought he had the patch. So I was like, oh, that's not the same guy.
Okay. Okay. So how were you able to set it aside, the beliefs that you had back then, how were you able to set them aside?
I mean, I don't know how I set it aside, just trying to do the right thing and listen to the evidence and try to be fair on both sides.
So you want to be fair, you want to listen to the evidence, right? But you didn't do anything in your mind to set it aside from your belief in the past, right?
Well, I think with me, my conscience is the person that I am, I wouldn't want to make a decision on somebody just on my thoughts or opinions, especially something as serious as this.
So how are you going, if you had this firm belief of his guilt back then, how are you going to remove that completely?
You'll laugh, but honestly, I always say you'll laugh because some people probably think, yeah, okay, right. I already started praying for God to touch my heart and to, if I get called, to help me, to guide me through the whole thing, even for me emotionally, to guide me through it.
Did you have that belief back then in 2017?
No, because I didn't take it as serious. It was just a thing on the news.
So now you have a firm religious belief. Is it okay if I call it religious?
You could say that, because I try to get closer to God to be a better person
Okay.
and not be, I don't know, not kind of have a heavy heart. And that's something I've been working on for a while.
And you prayed to God to set that aside in your heart, that guilt that you felt
Yes.
when you came here, specifically when you came here.
Well, actually, when I was taking a shower.
A shower on Friday?
Yeah, Friday when I went home.
Okay.
Because it was kind of, making me feel like, oh, I don't want to make a decision on something like that. And then I just prayed about it. That way I can kind of take a lift off of my, my shoulder, kind of.
Ma'am, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying I prayed about it so that way I kind of take a lift off my shoulder.
And you're relying on your connection and your prayer to get you past what you felt before.
Well, I've kind of, like I said, I don't watch the news anymore because I just try not to pay attention to all the stuff that goes on there. And as for me, I've been trying to change who I am and not let things affect me how they used to.
Okay, so I want to make sure that you answer my question. You were relying on God as early as Friday night in your prayer and your connection to Him to help you set aside these beliefs you had of my client's guilt.
Yeah, that's how I help myself.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I have some other questions I'd like to ask you.
Can I see the attorneys at sidebar, please? Ma'am, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed listening to you and talking to you today, and as have the attorneys. I'm getting the feeling this isn't the case for you.
Okay,
So I'm
that's
going to
fine.
excuse you from this and discharge you as a juror with our thanks. We appreciate all the time you've given to this
All right,
and
no,
all
it's
the
okay.
thought. But
I appreciate it.
thank you so much,
Have a
ma'am.
good day. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We still have a couple of the jurors from 10:30, all of the jurors from 1:30, and the 3 o'clock jurors have started arriving. So, like I said, make plans, folks. We're going to be here late. Court's in recess.